Good evening and a warm welcome to you, and thank you for joining us for our August Huawei Developer Workshop. My name is Michael Bratt, and I will be your host with the most this evening. It's great to have all of you with us, see some new faces and some familiar faces. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you so much for that. Our first speaker for today is Rob Maclean from App Developer Studio. Hi, Rob.
Hi.
Hi. Okay, so I'm just going to introduce Rob a bit so that you guys have got an idea of who we've got here on the guest studio with us. So Rob is the owner and managing director of App Developer Studio. After studying politics, philosophy, and economics at Oxford University, Rob worked in financial services in London before being recruited to Nedbank in 2005. In 2008, he started his own travel technology business that later became App Developer Studio in 2012. Rob's background is in product development and marketing rather than pure development. This, along with their long experience, allows App Developer Studio to provide commercial and strategic advice when working with their clients. Rob, over to you.
Thank you very much, and thank you to Huawei for inviting me to talk a little bit tonight about the latest trends we're seeing in the South African mobile development landscape. As Em said, I'm Rob Maclean. I'm Managing Director of App Developer Studio. So let me just talk a little bit about who we are. We are a full-stack, full-service development agency. That means we don't just develop apps and do coding. We do the design, we do the business case, we do consulting, monetization, the development, obviously, and the launch strategy, including App Store optimization and public relations. And we're a full-stack developer, so we're front-end and back-end across a range of technologies. We're experienced. We've been building apps for 8 years now, initially just for ourselves, and now for clients as well. We've launched over 100 apps. We've had clients who are large, big multinationals, and smaller one-man startup entrepreneurs, and anything in between. And we don't just compare ourselves with the best in South Africa. We compare ourselves in the best in the world. We have clients right now in the US, in Europe, through Africa. And we're very commercial. So we don't just do the development, as I said. We started out building apps for ourselves, and we've learned the hard way what works and what doesn't. And so we try and provide commercial advice to our clients. So what qualifies us to talk about trends in South Africa? Well, this explains it. We are number one in Google organic search in South Africa when you search for app developers. So just under all the paid advertising, we normally come first. What that means is we get a lot of eyeballs. We get a lot of visitors coming to our site every single day. And they don't just come to our site, they spend a lot of time on our site. Our site has information on different platforms, different types of apps, pricing, approaches, advice. So as you can see, users are spending more than 4 minutes on average on our site, which is a lot. And this, of course, means that we get a lot of inquiries, whether it's phone calls, WhatsApp messages, inquiries through the websites, emails, etc. So we do have a good finger on the pulse of trends in what the market seems to be wanting in app development in South Africa. And we can track that. Clients have to complete a form, and that form asks them to categorize the type of app they want. So we can have a look at trends over time in the different types of app the clients are wanting. So a few observations. Lockdown really did hit demand for apps. You can see on this chart, end of March, beginning of April, traffic to our site, inquiries to us collapsed more than half, to about 25% of it was overnight. Through April into May, it picked up, it dipped again a little bit, but since then it's been on the rise. And actually, apps are back. We have more traffic now than we did at the beginning of the year. We're 75% more inquiries up than we were a year ago, which is very encouraging. So what are we seeing in terms of trends in categories, the types of apps that the people are wanting? Some of this is pretty obvious. We are seeing a big shift to e-commerce. And now I'm not just talking about full mobile apps, but also web apps, websites, progressive web apps. A lot of people have websites. They're looking to enhance, improve, upgrade them, improve performance, perhaps shift platforms. We're seeing a big trend to Shopify, for example, and we do support building e-commerce sites on Shopify. We're seeing people who have websites wanting to move to apps, use push notifications, use marketing. So a big trend to e-commerce. Obviously in lockdown, stores can't sell physically. They have to improvise and move to the digital channels. A massive jump in on-demand. We've seen on-demand apps on the rise for a couple of years now, but a big specific shift to food, groceries, multi-vendor, hyper-local marketplaces where people can order products, I was going to say services, but actually products, groceries, food, physical items from stores, suppliers near to them. And also some other verticals for childcare, for security, for health advice, for fitness. On-demand apps is definitely a trend that we're seeing, and I expect that to continue. The trend for people to work, learn, educate, train remotely. Education apps for students contacting us, schools, varsities, wanting to learn how to, or to work out how to teach and learn remotely. A lot of servicing inquiries where call centers are closed, and so the use of bots, the use of automated systems and apps to try and service clients in the digital world. And also we're working on quite a few apps at the moment for data collection. Old paper-based forms that companies used to get people to complete, that can't happen, so sending a digital link or an app that people can download to complete information digitally. Health, in the pandemic, it's kind of obvious that this would be on the rise. Track and trace apps, self-diagnosis for COVID symptoms, raising awareness, education, access control to workplace or to institutions, linked to thermometers, etc. Bots. We're very excited about bots. Not just transactional bots, structured multiple choice yes/no type things, but also conversational bots where we're using technology to try and understand things like emotion and sentiment to actually provide a better service to people. And specifically, WhatsApp and bots. WhatsApp is opening its doors now to integrating bots into that, as I'm sure some of you have experienced. Entertainment, as people are at home, they're doing more gaming, spending more time on social networks. We're not gaming developers, so we haven't built those apps, but we're getting a lot of inquiries for gaming apps and social networking type apps. On the flip side, a slight decline in some categories, security. We built a lot of panic button apps for security companies. That seems to have gone on a bit of a back burner with COVID this year, but I expect that to pick up rapidly now. Transport apps, Uber type apps, obviously people are physically not traveling as much, so those apps less popular, and government. Some other, I've talked a little bit about the types of apps. I want to spend a minute on the types of technology we're seeing on the rise. Hybrid has been around for a long time now, and we didn't really believe in hybrid. We never thought the performance or security was good enough, so we were strongly in favor of native apps. But hybrid is now in a position where we're using particularly Flutter a lot. It seems to be becoming slowly the go-to language for hybrid. Migration to cloud, been around for a while, but specifically serverless, and not just servers on the cloud, but a serverless pay-as-you-go type financial model, and doing more of the heavy lifting, more of the work in the back end, what's called now the API economy. Bots I've talked a little bit about, but I think that's a trend that's going to continue to grow. Machine learning, OCR, object identification. I know there's going to be some talk about that by Huawei, some exciting stuff Huawei are doing in that space in the future. Definitely, there's a massive trend in that kind of automation, machine learning, AI space. Software as a service platform. I think in particular things like education and on-demand, e-commerce. It's very expensive to build these things to the standard that the public expect. It takes time and is expensive. So increasingly these models where you can customize and white label existing technologies is becoming more popular. Progressive web apps have been around for a while, but we're actually starting to do these, trying to see progressive web apps launching, which is exciting, and an augmented reality, which is, I believe, starting to become a bit more mainstream. A couple of other final observations before I wrap up. We are seeing budgets on the decline. Times are tight. We have to do more with smaller client budgets. Increasingly, we have to do prototypes of design so clients can motivate for budget from investors, from stakeholders, from board members. Increasingly, we're getting more international clients, which is really exciting. So as people are working from home around the world, they're realizing that if they're not in their own office, they might as well speak to someone in South Africa. And we're lucky, English language speaking, on the same time zone as Europe. We have a great tech industry, very skilled developers here, but a lower cost base. So we're working with some international clients, which I think is a great success story for South Africa. A shift from paid and in-app purchase business models to free apps. It's very difficult to get people to pay for apps now. And commission-based and advertising revenue models. The commission-based where when someone transacts, buys something through an app, the service provider gets 95%, but the app owner gets 5%. So there's money to be made in putting that deal together. Importance of data security. Even in the last week, 2 weeks, there's been massive data security breaches. But POPI Act is now really coming into force, and there's real legal, financial, reputational risk to companies. So data security, more important than ever. And finally, what we call apathy, literally apathy. It is more difficult to get people to download apps, to put them on their phone, to take up their memory. And so apps have got to work harder. They've got to do more. They've got to provide real value every day. So thank you very much.
Wow, Rob, I think our guests would agree that this was very, very, very insightful. I think we're very honored to have you here today. I think you've shared really, really good insights. Before I ask our guests to share some questions in our chat box, I have a question for you.
Okay.
So, what apps have you developed thus far, or do you want to share something with our guests, or any cool apps that you guys have been working on?
Well, as I said, we've built a lot of apps. We've built more than 100 apps now. I think we've got some great, exciting apps. We're working on something at the moment which is work in progress, but I think it's so relevant in South Africa and is very exciting, and that's a security panic button app. But it's not just a speed dial like these apps were, but it actually, you press your panic button, and it needn't necessarily be you open the app and press the panic button, but you shake your phone, or maybe you have a safe word and we can use voice recognition. And then that will not just tell your security company, but it could tell a network of security companies, you're in trouble. They can see where you are. You can see how far away they are. They can potentially hear what your phone is recording. They can see what the phone's camera is recording. And so it's compiling evidence that's usable in court. And also they're coming to the situation prepared. So I'm really excited about that kind of Uber for security model in South Africa, especially in the world of gender-based violence.
And just for some clarity, is this app, just for my clarity, and I think for our guest clarity as well, is this app already existing currently?
It is.
Or it's still in progress?
The app is technically ready.
Okay.
It's not launched.
Okay, cool. Are there any questions from our guests for Rob? We've got a question from Anonymous. There's no name attached to it, but I think Anonymous wants to know if there are any social development activities that you guys are currently running.
Thank you. It's a good question. I'm not quite sure what's meant by social development. If I could, I suspect it is, are we doing apps for public good? Or are we inviting people to come for placements, for work experience in the company? Yes, in terms of how we work with clients, often it is startups or people with minimal money and they need a MVP just to get to market. And so we try and keep cost very minimum, basically cost-based pricing, to get them to the point where they can gain investment. So we kind of are trying to do our part to get small businesses started. We do have, at the moment, we've had 2 people in the company on secondment, just trying work experience basically. And we're always open to that. And we're also recruiting, so if there's people listening who want to send a CV or to kind of explain what they can do, they're more than welcome to. Because we are a studio. We don't necessarily employ everyone. but we know who's out there. So if someone comes and asks us for a game, we can't do it, but we'll put the client in touch with people who can.
Awesome stuff. Anonymous, I hope that answered your question. If it didn't, no worries. You can email me at matlakane.mafoko@huawei.com and we can further elaborate on that question. Are there any other questions from our guests today? Okay, we've got a question from Kirubite. Is there any significant changes in SEO and are you able to share?
Great question. We are app developers primarily rather than web developers, although we do build a lot of websites, and our own website does pretty well in SEO, as you saw. We're not up to the latest changes. We see things. There's two parts to SEO. There is the technical side. Does your site work? Does it load quickly? Does it render correctly? Increasingly, does it work on a cell phone? Google is marking down sites massively that don't work nicely on a cell phone. So there's a technical side. But what's often forgotten is the interest side. Like Google, other search engines aren't just looking at does your site look nice, but do people stay on it? Do they click on it? Do they complete something? Do they complete an action? And so my advice is have a good website with interesting stuff on it.
Yeah.
People will spend time on it. Google, other search engines will see that, and you'll climb the rankings.
Most definitely. And I think SEO is a big thing.
Yeah.
Like it's literally a
massive.
big thing right now.
Yeah.
Okay, here's a great question. I think one of our guests wants to know what's the best advice you would actually advise to someone who's currently developing an app.
Yeah, I also had the question, and it was about getting downloads for online retail.
So I'm thinking marketing, something related to marketing.
Yeah, I think it depends a little bit on what you're selling. You have to get your app in front of your audience. Social media, and it needn't be big budget social media. I think you can go a long way, bang for your buck by using social media advertising in a clever way. So I always say start very small. Test a few things, A/B testing, see what works, spend a bit more, try a few new things, and only over a month of very active watching engagement, then spend your money. And it's not necessarily where you thought it might be. It might not be Google AdWords. It could be a very niche community on Facebook. And I think things like App Store optimization is a whole science, a bit like SEO.
Yeah.
Making sure if you've got high uninstall rates, that's a problem, and you're going to be marked down for that. So going and do a bit of research on ASO, I think, is important.
I can agree to that, Rob. I can really agree to that. I think marketing is plays a very important role, especially when it comes to promoting your app and so forth. Yeah. Are there any more questions from our guests? Did you get that, Rob?
I did.
Okay.
It's massive. And not just in the sales strategy. So the question was, if people didn't hear, what role does
UX and UI
play in the sales strategy?
Yeah.
I mean, for me, UX and UI is 80% of the success of an app. Forget in our sales strategy, but in an app success. Does it look good? Is it simple, intuitive, complicated? I always think of Uber as something that is unbelievably simple to use. You type in where you're going, the rest is done. But it's a very clever thing that's happening in the background. So UI, UX generally is super important. In terms of how we use it in a sales role, we often break our sales process into chunks. We can see a client can't afford the big budget app development, so we'll actually sell them a prototype. And that can be even just a homepage screen. It's not the whole prototype, it's just the homepage. Make it look nice. Show we get the concept, allow them to show that to investors so they don't have to stand and get in front of investors. They can send them a link on WhatsApp and the investor can put it on the phone and go, right, I get the concept. A good homepage design explains the whole app. So it's very important in how we work with clients, but also how we try and help clients to get the funding to pay us for the big project.
Yeah. Rob, I really think our guests have lots of questions, but remember, guys, if you have any queries, any questions, please do email me at matlakane.mafoko@huawei.com, and I will share those questions with Rob, and Rob can give you answers furthermore.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
Alternatively, you can also email Rob directly. It's rob@appdeveloperstudio.co.za. You can also visit their website, www.appdeveloperstudio.co.za. Rob, thank you so much. It was great to hear about your business and how you've been innovating to keep up with the trends. That security app, it sounds fascinating, and I can't wait to see it in market and to see what it can do.